And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ron Carr, and welcome to this week's Velocity Mindset Success Stories. I'm the author of the book, The Velocity Mindset, and I hope you're having a great day today because we're about to make your day even better with the guest that I have on the show today. Uh, the guest's name is Bruce Turkel. He's a good friend of mine, but let me share with you some of his background. He had his own advertising agency, and when he had the agency, he helped create some of the world's best and most compelling brands, such as Hasbro, Nike, American Express, Charles Schwab, Citicorp, and the list just goes on and on and on. Perhaps you've seen Bruce on TV. He's been a frequent guest on national news and appears regularly on CNN, CBS, MSNBC, CCTV, which is the Chinese television network, and NPR. Perhaps you've read about Bruce. He's been featured in the New York Times, Fast Company, Communication Arts, Adweek, and Speaker magazines. Or maybe perhaps you've heard him speak. He's spoken at many hundreds of organizations and conferences, including MIT, Harvard, TEDx, and he was awarded the 2017, or he was inducted in the 2017 class of the Speaker Hall of Fame. And if that's not enough, maybe you've read one of his 6 books. His latest is That All There Is? And this is a copy of the book, and I'm telling you, I'm reading it, and I'm addicted to this book right now. We'll talk about it in a little while. And his previous book before that was It's All About Them. Now, if that's not enough, maybe you've heard him playing his harmonica. Bruce fronts, believe this or not, for the popular Miami R&B band Black Star. And if that's still not enough, maybe you've seen his artwork because he's an incessant doodler and is famous for his caricatures of the local and national business leaders who he's worked with. Or maybe you just simply passed him in a marathon. He's a dedicated but slow runner. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you this afternoon, my good friend, Mr. Bruce Turkel. Welcome.
Thank you, Ron. I hope my mom and my wife were listening to that because that was wonderful. Thank you very much.
The bill's coming in the mail for that. So, Bruce, let's get into it. We only have a short time here today. Let's get into the book. Is that all there is to it? You made a distinction. It's so simple, but yet it's so powerful. It hit me between the eyes. And you said that many times, people have to understand what it is that they want in life, but many times people have trouble figuring it out. I've had trouble. Many of my clients have when it comes to a vision. But what you made so simple and powerful when you said, sometimes to figure out where you want to go, you need to simply create the list of what you don't want. And when I look back on this, I realized that's how I moved to Florida. You were commending me because, I made such that move after living 65 years, all my life in the New York metro area. You were amazed that I simply packed up on myself and came down here. But it really was that list of what I don't want: the cold weather, the dark and dank days in winter, which, I need light. And it really impacts my mental state, if you will. It gets darker here in Florida 45 minutes later than New York, so we can extend the daylight. And of course, it's not cold anymore. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you came up with that concept, also how you may have used it in your life, and we'll get to some more questions from that as we talk.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned in that introduction, I ran an ad agency for a long, long time. And one of the things that was critical, the number one thing in all of our businesses, and we all know it, is client acquisition. But we also know that what's almost as important is client retention, because it costs a lot to acquire a client. But if you can keep them for long periods of time, your business becomes much more profitable. And the only way to do that, as far as I can tell, is to understand what they want and make sure you're delivering not what you want, but what they want. I wrote a book called All About Them, so it makes sense. I would think that. And I would ask my clients, what do you want? And they would say the obvious things. I want more business. I want more revenue, whatever it was. But we had to dig a lot deeper. We had to peel the onion back much further to get answers that we could work with so that we could deliver over the long term. Well, I sold my business, and it's a long story, which, you know, we can go into or not. But when I started talking to people about, you know, how to make their lives better, how to improve their outlooks, how to improve their opportunities, how to pivot, I would say to people, what do you want? And amazing to me, they didn't know. I mean, they would say things like, I want to be happy. But come on, happy is sort of a nebulous sort of thing, right? Or they'd say, I want to be fulfilled. Also, kind of, okay, what fulfills you? Is it spiritual? Is it financial? Is it social? Everybody is different. And people could not give me hard facts. However, you know that people are really good at complaining, right? If you say to someone, what don't you want? They can give you a litany. And to be fair, when you lived in New York, you and I would have conversations and you would tell me all the things you don't want. And you just listed them. I don't like the cold weather. I don't like being in such a crowded urban area. I don't like the fact that it's not sunny and bright here all the time. Okay. Listing what you don't want does not move you forward. However, listing what you don't want and then filling in the opposite of that does. So when you say, I don't want cold, what you're saying is, I want to be warm. When you're saying, I don't like to be in the dark, what you're saying is, I want a place that has lots of light. When you're saying, I don't like being in such a congested urban area all the time, what you're saying is, I want a place with some space where I can stretch out, where I can breathe. Now you have a very positive list. I want warm, I want bright, I want open air. That's kind of easy to go after. And you did it. I mean, you were nice enough to invite me to your new place. We walked out to that lake. It was all those things. We were watching the sun set, but it was reflecting off the lake and it was nice and bright. It was warm and balmy and you had space.
You know,
all you have to do is turn those negatives into positives.
yeah. So I subconsciously did that. And you're absolutely right. Because when I listed, you know, I don't want to be cold, then I said, what do you want? I want to live in shorts all year round. That was my image.
Right.
So you're right. I did have the positives attached to what I definitely didn't want. But the thing is, and I want you to talk about this, I was more juiced about what I didn't want than about necessarily what I wanted.
We are trained a number of ways to be that way. Culturally, we are trained to fix problems, right? No matter what you do, if you're in a professional, your job is to fix problems. An architect fixes problems. A physician fixes problems. An accountant fixes problems. We look for negatives and look for ways to fix them. We are trained not to brag about who we are, what we have, what we do. We all know that person, and most of us don't like that person. So we don't talk about those things. Also, if you go back evolutionarily, I think that's a word, but if you go back in time and you look at our progress through evolution, in order to stay alive, we have to overcome obstacles. You're going to stay alive whether you're happy or not. You're not going to stay alive if you're too cold or if you're too hungry or if you're too sick. So dealing with negatives has been the way we as a culture, as a people, regardless of your background, that's how we grew evolutionarily. So it's easy to put your fingers on problems. Problems get us fired up, either because, oh my God, this is killing me negatively, or I'm going to go out and do something about it positively. If you're male and you grew up playing football or playing baseball, what did you do? You went out and crushed the other team. If you're female, you were trained, whether it was in sports or academics, to be better than someone else. We are used to fixing problems. So why not take that inherent skill set that we all have and use it to get what we want? And you did it. You were a perfect example of that.
So, by the way, we're here with Bruce Turkel. I have to make one announcement. Some of you may see that Bruce's picture is freezing up. It's not his office setup. He does a lot of Zoom videos. The problem is that right now where he is, they're having an incredibly severe storm. So hopefully it will clear up soon and you'll be able to see his bright and shiny face without any kind of interruptions. So let's go back to what we were talking about. So if we go back to my example of moving down here, I started with what I didn't want. Now, my plan, because as many people may have known from reading the Velocity Mindset, know about me. After I was done with the presidency of NSA, I had 9 surgeries, mostly on my back, and I realized, I gotta change my lifestyle, if you will, from that surgery. But I also had to make back a lot of money that I lost. So for me, my plan was wait till I'm 70. Go around the world, do as many keynotes as you can, and make the money back. But then COVID hit, which was a great equalizer for all of us. And because everything we thought the world to be no longer existed, we all started saying, what do we really want? And a lot of us started making some real life-changing decisions. And for me, the issue was, why wait? And that's what came up. And the thing that gave that juice was that because of COVID and everything going virtual, I closed my office down and I moved it into my home, which was fine. I enjoyed working from home. It was not a problem. The only thing is, the image in my mind was, oh my God, if I can't stand the cold and I hate the long, dark days, and if I don't go out when it's cold, if my office is in my home, I'm never leaving. And how depressing is that going to be? Because at least I had to get in the car and drive 20 minutes to my office. So talk about COVID being the great equalizer, if you will, and how it plays into everything when something significant like this happens.
Sure. Let me give this a little slightly different feel, if you don't mind.
Sure.
COVID is what's called in the marketing business the catalytic mechanism. It's the thing that happens that causes a reaction. If you think about a gun, the trigger is the catalytic mechanism. You pull the trigger and something happens, right? But understand that society-wise, we were going through enormous changes before COVID that would have affected your business in all the same ways and would have affected our social situation in all the same ways. The internet changed everything. It's really only been around about 30 years. Most of us have only been dealing with it for about 20 years. But the internet changed everything because it meant that all of a sudden everything was available at any time, any place, anywhere, any price. It used to be that no matter what you did, if you were at the top of your game in your competitive area, you would be successful. Because there was only so many people who could be doing what you were doing within that trading area. Didn't mean you were mega successful. Maybe you were, maybe you weren't, but you were successful because, again, people had to come to you for goods and services. The internet changed that. It used to be that in whatever you did, you could be successful by controlling information. Internet changed that. All of a sudden, we had globalization and we had the democratization of information. If you remember real estate brokers, one of the number one things they had for business was the MLS. They knew what homes were up for sale. The rest of us did not. But now you go to Redfin or you go to Zillow or you go somewhere else, you can get that information. That was a great equalizer. Democratization, globalization, generification. Because of computerization of production, most products now do the same thing. All cars are good. That didn't used to be true. Mercedes-Benzes were better cars than Toyotas 50 years ago. I don't think you can say that's true any longer. They might be fancier or more statusy, but they're not better. So all these things were changing, and we were changing with them little by little. But nobody expected a global pandemic that would essentially shut us down for a year and a half. It would shut down all travel. So your speaking business and my speaking business had to change. It shut down retail. It shut down the tourism industry. It shut down the restaurant business. The live music business pretty much went away. Nobody expected that. That catalytic mechanism sped everything up. But understand, it was happening anyways. And so everything that you have done is because of what happened, but also was allowed because of what happened, right? Because before we had globalization and democratization of information, we couldn't be having this conversation.
So are you saying that the change that I made when COVID hit and I decided to come down to Florida now, because I can always, you're saying that change happened because, not just because of COVID, but because I was already working on it in my mind?
Absolutely. COVID was, to use an old expression, the straw that broke the camel's back. COVID came along, you were stuck in that building, and what happened? All the things you had listed, let's use your examples, too dark, too cold, too congested, all of a sudden now compressed you. And so now it was time to make a move.
You know, it's
But
funny.
If
It's
COVID
funny.
hadn't happened, you would have done the same thing, just would have taken you longer.
It's a great understanding on your part. It's funny when you say too congested because, you know, I'm about 35 minutes north of Fort Lauderdale, and someone's in Fort Lauderdale. I'll say, yeah, no problem. I'll be there, you know, in 45 minutes. You sure you want? And they go, you sure you want to drive that? It's 35 minutes away. And I would turn to them and say, sometimes it would take me an hour to get across the George Washington Bridge, which is only a mile and a half long.
Welcome to South Florida, my friend. I will tell you that in South Florida, we believe there are two man-made items you can see from space: the Great Wall of China and the Dade-Broward line. The lines between Dade County, which is Miami, and Broward County, which is Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, and then go further north to Palm Beach County. People here just don't do that.
Right, I get that. So listen, let's continue, because there's a couple of other gems you had in the book that I want to make sure we get our people to understand. And again, the book that we're talking about that Bruce just released is That All There Is? Is that correct?
Yes, is that all there is?
So you talked about how we all have weaknesses and strengths, and that everybody concentrates on their strengths, but where they're missing a boat is not maybe spending enough time on their weaknesses and using them as a strength, not turning them or changing them, but using the weaknesses as a strength. And that is a big distinction, because as you know, Bruce, you know, I've got ADD, and for many years in my life, I was beating myself up. I couldn't stay focused, beating myself up that I couldn't remember names, beating myself up that I just couldn't do this. And, you know, it just put too much pressure on me. And then when I finally embraced the ADD, all of a sudden my life changed. I started, even though I was a great consultant before and speaker, my consulting took off to higher levels I never even thought were possible, meaning my value to my clients. And the same with my speaking, because I wasn't worried about that stuff anymore. I was now embracing what it is, because for every negative, there's always a positive. So while I was scattered, the positive for my clients always was I was 5 steps ahead of them. And that's how I was able to have them see things where they didn't. So I started embracing the ADD, and I said, you know what? Don't even plan so much. Don't worry about it. Forget it. Just go and create the conversation, because you're great at creating the conversation. When you hear the openings and you hear the problems, that's when you do your best work. Talk to us about that.
Sure. The chapter is titled Make Your Scar Your Star. And it's all about figuring out who you are and why you matter. Oscar Wilde, the famous author, said, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. And if you're honest with yourself, being yourself is not just look at me, look how great I am, but embracing the areas where, to your point, you're not as strong or you have liabilities. Now, don't take this to mean that you can run wild with your liabilities. If your liability is that you're a heroin addict, chances are you need to deal with that before you move forward. And efficiency experts will tell you that you are much better off focusing on your strengths and trying to enhance your strengths than you are trying to fix your weaknesses. I'm not good at math, so it's silly for me to do my own taxes. I'm much better off spending the time doing what I'm good at. However,
but what you're saying is the key is not to fix the weaknesses, is to embrace them.
The key is to embrace them. So the example I was going to use is very similar to an example you used. When I was in elementary school, I used to get something called a report card. Y'all got them. And, you know, you get the grades. You got an A in this, a B in this, a C in this, whatever. But there'd always be the comment section, right? And the instructors, the teachers would always write, Bruce is a very bright student. If only he could sit still, stop talking, stop fidgeting, stop drawing pictures. That's what they wrote. That wasn't a good thing. I would get in trouble when I brought that report card home. Now, all these years later, like you, I speak at a conference, and the people fill out an evaluation form. And, you know, it says, was the content good? Yes. Did the speaker know what he was talking about? Yes. But they always write 2 words for me: energetic and enthusiastic. Oh, you were so energetic on stage. You drew pictures, you played music, you told jokes, you moved around a lot. I don't stand in the green room before I go on stage, Ron, and say, okay, when you go out there, Bruce, be energetic, be enthusiastic. It's who I am. But when I started as a speaker, I would try to stand still. I would try not to move too much. I would try to talk like this because I was trying to imitate people who I thought were successful. I wasn't being myself. That same talks too much, draws too much, whistles too much, all of that was actually who I actually am. And that became this enormous advantage to me when I got up on stage. To your point, it was a matter of embracing it, of saying, look, this is who I am. And this is what I can bring to the party. And by doing that, I no longer tried to fit my round peg into a square hole, but instead I made my scar my star. I celebrated who I was. I'll give you one very quick example. You mentioned earlier that I front the R&B band. You might not have heard in my voice, but I have a very froggy voice. I had throat surgery twice. And coming out of throat surgery, my voice was very rough. I had to go to therapy and all of that. So what happens in the band? I don't sing the sweet songs. Oh, baby, baby. I don't have the voice for it. But all of the rock songs, those are the ones I do. I embrace the liability, and it has become quite a trademark for me.
So there's one important point I want to. There's many important points you brought up, but I want to concentrate on this point. I remember years ago I was at an NSA meeting, National Speaker Association, and a very successful speaker said, and always drilled into us: you want to be a successful speaker, you got to welcome the audience. Go meet them at the front of the door. Say hello to them. So in this one speech, I was really saying hello. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? Can't wait to have the program. And the audience was kind of reserved, and they were like looking at, who is this guy? And I do my speech, and it was a great speech, got really good reviews, but I got a few comments that weren't not comments, lower ratings. And I guarantee you it was because I put them out of their comfort zone by the way I came at them. And the interesting thing I think that you and I would agree on, you can get advice from a lot of people, consultants, experts, friends, whatever. And just remember one thing: when you get the advice, not everything works for everybody.
So may I give you a great example?
Please.
Jimmy Buffett was asked about his musical ability. Now you know how successful Jimmy Buffett is, and all
Just a little.
Yeah, just a little bit, right? But they asked him. They said, "So you know, you're like a superstar. How do you rate as a musician?" He says, "Well, I ain't that good of a guitar player." He says, "You know, Mac McAnally, my front man, he can play circles around me at guitar. I mean, he's much better than I am. I can strum a few chords and I can play a few things, but I ain't a great guitar player." He says, "And I'm not that good of a singer." He says, "You see them, those 3 women behind me, 2 of them, they're on Broadway when they don't work for me. They do show tunes for Broadway. And the third one, she is trained. She's an opera singer. She has an 8-octave range. She can sing classic opera. She can read music, and she can sing. They're incredible speakers. I ain't that good of a singer." He goes, "I'm not that good of a guitar player. I ain't that good of a singer, but I'm the best damn Jimmy Buffett in the world."
So the point is, what we're saying to you is, hear the ideas from everybody, but pick the ones that you think work well for you based on who you are, and let who you are come out and shine. Because when it shines, that's when you'll be your most powerful self. Would you agree with that?
I do. My mantra is, people don't choose what you do. They choose who you are. If you and I were applying for a job to speak at a conference, can you speak for 55 minutes? Sure. Can I speak for 55 minutes? Sure. Are you a member of the National Speakers Association? Yeah. Am I? Yes. And you were their president, for God's sakes. Have you written a bunch of books? Yes. Have I written a bunch of books? Yes. On paper, we look exactly the same, as does hundreds of other speakers. And if that's what we're going to sell, what we do, I'm a speaker, it's not a very good competitive environment to be in. But if I want Ron Carr to address my audience because he wrote Velocity Mindset, because he's going to show my audience, my employees, how to use their skill sets and use his ideas to build their business, guess what? You got no competition. It's the same for whoever's watching and what they do. What you do is cost of entry. You better be good at it. If you're not in business. But just because you are, you're not in business either. You have to add who you are, why you matter, and how you make your client, customer, consumer feel about themselves.
So to relate this to the audience, if you're a good salesperson, that's not necessarily going to help you get the deal. That's the course of entry to be in the game. Same thing with being a good leader.
It's the ante.
Difference.
You know, if you go to Vegas and you go to the poker table, if you don't ante up, if you don't put money in the pot, they don't let you play, right? But just because you do ante doesn't mean you're going to win.
Right. The difference is going to be your uniqueness.
Exactly.
That helps you bring it over the finish line.
You're a great mechanic. That is your ante. That gets you in the game. Now what? The one thing you can bring to the equation that no one else can bring is you.
So, Bruce, believe it or not, we're running out of time. That's what happens when you're having fun and time just flies by. So, in the last couple of minutes, what's the final thought that you want the audience to walk away with?
Because I came from the marketing business, advertising business, I ran a brand management firm. I have this single saying that I would like everybody to understand and keep in mind. A good brand makes people feel good, but a great brand makes people feel good about themselves. So as you build your business, as you build your life, as you try to figure out what you want to do, remember that as a brand, and you are a brand, what you do makes people feel good, but the key is to make them feel good about themselves. A good brand makes people feel good, but a great brand makes people feel good about themselves.
So extend your purpose in life and make sure that you're making all of your clients and all of your employees feeling good about themselves, because when they do, they won't buy products from anybody else, and they certainly won't leave your company to go work for somebody else. So if you want more about Bruce Turkel, simply connect with him by going to the link that's on the screen, https://BruceTurkel.com. And you're going to have a lot of information. And if you want to add to your reading list, definitely get his two last books. One is It's All About Them. And the last one that just came out that I'm reading, and it's a phenomenal read, Is That All There Is? And if you want a third book, The Velocity Mindset would work well for you. Bruce, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. You were a great guest. You certainly are a valued speaker and consultant to the world at large. And it's because of the results that you produce for your clients. Thank you for joining us. And to everybody else, we wish you all the best for today and for the year. Go out there, make it happen. And remember, the velocity mindset is a choice. You can live it or not live it. It's up to you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ron.